The Dominion had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for 12,000 years. No species had ever defeated them. No species had ever come close. They were the perfect killing machines, born from a world of endless war and shaped by millions of years of brutal evolution. A single warrior stood 9 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in black armor that grew from their own skin. This armor was harder than steel and could stop most weapons. Their claws were sharp enough to cut through the hull of a spaceship. They could survive in the cold vacuum of space for hours. If you cut off their arm, they would grow a new one within days. They felt almost no pain. They knew no fear. Every species in the galaxy knew about them. Some called them the Dark Hunters. Others called them the End of Worlds. When ships appeared in your star system, you had 2 choices. You could surrender and become slaves, or you could fight and die. There was no third option. Commander stood on the bridge of his warship, the Crushing Tide. He was old for nearly 300 years. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had killed so many enemies that he had stopped counting long ago. His black armor was covered in scars from battles he had won. His fleet had detected a new species on a small planet called 442b. The species called themselves humans. They had only been traveling through space for 200 years. They were young. They were weak. They would be easy prey. Looked at the images his scouts had sent back. The humans were small creatures, barely 6 feet tall. They had no armor on their bodies. Their skin was soft and pink. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom. They could not survive in space. They could not regenerate their limbs. A single blow from a warrior would kill them instantly. The planet below had a colony of 40,000 humans. They called it New Virginia. They had built farms and homes and schools. They had families there, children. They thought they were safe, so far from their home world. They were wrong. Gave the order to attack. 3,000 miles away, on the surface of New Virginia, Captain Jake was sleeping when the alarm started screaming. He jumped out of bed and ran to the command center of the small military base. The night sky outside was turning orange with fire. Jake was 35 years old. He had brown hair and green eyes and a scar on his chin from a training accident years ago. He had joined the United Earth Defense Force when he was 18. He had never seen real combat. None of them had. Humanity had been lucky. They had not met any hostile species in their 2 centuries of space travel. That luck had just ended. Lieutenant was already at the command center when Jake arrived. She was a combat engineer, responsible for weapons and defenses. She was 29 years old, with short black hair and quick hands that could fix anything. Right now, those hands were shaking as she read the sensor data. "Captain," she said, her voice tight with fear, "we have 12 alien warships in orbit. They are launching landing craft, hundreds of them." Jake felt his stomach turn to ice. Their base had 200 soldiers. The colony had no real defenses. They had never needed any. "What species?" he asked. Looked at him with wide eyes. "The computer says." The room went silent. Everyone knew that name. Everyone knew what it meant. Sergeant Cole pushed through the door. He was the oldest soldier on the base, 42 years old, with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too much. He had fought in the Mars uprising 10 years ago, a civil war between human colonies. He was the only person on this planet who had ever been in real combat. "How long until they land?" asked. 20 minutes, replied, "maybe less." Jake looked at his soldiers. They were scared. He was scared too, but 40,000 people were counting on them. Families, children, people who had come to this planet looking for a better life. "We cannot win this fight," Jake said. The words hurt to say, but they were true. "But we do not need to win. We just need to buy time. Our ship, the Resolute, is the only military vessel in range. I am going to take it up and try to slow down their fleet. The rest of you will stay here and protect the civilians." Stepped forward. "I will lead the ground defense. We will get everyone into the emergency shelters. They are built to survive anything. Jake nodded. He looked at, I need you on the ground. Your mines and traps might be the only thing that slows them down. Swallowed hard, but she nodded. I will do what I can. Jake grabbed his combat gear and ran toward the landing pad where the Resolute was waiting. The ship was small, designed for patrol and rescue missions. It had never been in a real battle. Neither had its crew. As he ran, Jake could see the first landing craft breaking through the clouds. They were huge, black shapes that blocked out the stars. The sound of their engines was like thunder. He reached the Resolute and climbed aboard. The crew was already at their stations, their faces pale with fear but their hands steady on the controls. Get us in the air, Jake ordered. Now. The Resolute rose from the ground just as the first craft touched down near the colony. Jake could see warriors pouring out, their black armor gleaming in the light of the burning buildings. They moved fast, faster than any human could run. Jake opened a communication channel to the base. They are landing near the eastern farms. Get everyone moving west. Already on it, replied. Jake, be careful up there. Jake looked at the 12 warships waiting in orbit. Each one was 10 times the size of the Resolute. Each one had weapons that could destroy his ship in seconds. I will do my best, he said. He closed the channel and looked at his crew. There were 198 people on this ship. Most of them were young, some barely out of training. They had signed up for a peaceful mission, a simple patrol of a quiet colony world. Now they were going to fight the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Jake took a deep breath. Fear was natural, fear was human, but so was courage. So was the refusal to give up, even when everything seemed lost. Listen to me, he said to his crew. I know you are scared. I am scared too, but down there are 40,000 people who need us, children who want to grow up, parents who want to see their children grow. We are the only thing standing between them and those monsters. He paused, looking at each face on the bridge. They think we are weak. They think we are prey. They think we will run away and let them take what they want, but they do not know us. They do not know what humans can do when we fight for something we love. He pointed at the fleet ahead. Let us show them. The Resolute shot forward into the darkness of space, one small ship against an empire of death. The first warriors reached the eastern farms within minutes of landing. They moved like shadows through the burning fields, their black armor making them almost invisible in the smoke. Each warrior carried a plasma rifle that could burn through concrete walls. Each warrior had killed dozens of enemies before. Sergeant Cole watched them through his tactical visor from behind a broken wall. He had 12 soldiers with him, 12 humans against hundreds of. The math was simple. The math was death. But had not survived the Mars uprising by following math. Hold your fire, he whispered into his radio. Let them get closer. Private Amy was crouched beside him. She was 22 years old, from a small town in Ohio on Earth. She had joined the Defense Force to pay for college. She had never fired a weapon at a living thing before today. Her hands were shaking, but she held her pulse rifle steady. They moved past the first line of buildings. They were not being careful. Why would they be? No species had ever fought back against them successfully. They expected the humans to run. They expected fear. They expected surrender. Waited until the first group was directly in front of his position. Then he gave the order. Fire. 12 pulse rifles opened up at once. The superheated plasma rounds hit at close range, burning through their armor and into their bodies. 3 warriors fell immediately. 2 more stumbled, their regeneration systems struggling to repair the damage. But the rest kept coming. A warrior charged its position. It was fast, so fast that barely had time to react. He rolled to the side as massive claws sliced through the wall where he had been standing. Stone and metal flew everywhere. Came up on one knee and fired 3 rounds into the warrior's chest. The staggered but did not fall. Its wounds began to heal even as watched. Amy appeared beside him, firing her own rifle. Together, they poured fire into the creature until it finally collapsed. "They can heal," Amy gasped. "How do we kill something that can heal?" Grabbed her arm and pulled her toward cover as more approached. "We shoot them until they stop moving. Then we shoot them some more." Across the colony, Lieutenant was setting her traps. She had spent 3 years designing weapons and defenses for the Defense Force. She had never thought she would actually use them. She planted electromagnetic mines at every intersection. She rigged buildings to collapse on command. She set up automated turrets that would target anything over 8 feet tall. It was not much against an army of thousands, but it was something. Her radio crackled. They are pushing toward the central square. We cannot hold them." Looked at her map. The central square was where the main civilian shelter was located. 3,000 people were hiding inside, including 200 children. "Fall back to position 7, she said. "I have a surprise waiting for them." Squad retreated through the streets, firing as they went. The followed, confident in their victory. They did not notice the small devices hidden in the rubble around them. Waited until at least 30 were in the kill zone. Then she pressed the button. The electromagnetic mines exploded with a sound like thunder. They had armor that could stop bullets and plasma, but their armor was made of a natural metal that grew from their bodies. It conducted electricity perfectly. The blast sent waves of power through every in the area. Their own armor became a weapon against them. 15 warriors dropped immediately, their nervous systems destroyed. 10 more fell to their knees, stunned and helpless. Squad finished them off before they could recover. But it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. More landing craft were arriving every minute. They had thousands of warriors on the ground now. Soldiers were dying, one by one, fighting to protect the people they had sworn to serve. In orbit, Captain Jake was fighting his own battle. The Resolute was a small ship, but it was fast. Jake used that speed to stay alive, dodging between the massive warships, hitting them with quick attacks before running away. He had destroyed 2 of their smaller ships already. It was not much, but it was more than any human had ever done against the Commander watched from the bridge of the crushing tide. He was not worried. The human ship was annoying, like an insect buzzing around his head. He would swat it soon enough. But something was bothering him. His warriors on the ground were dying at a higher rate than expected. The humans were not running away. They were fighting, even though they had no chance of winning. They were sacrificing themselves to protect their civilians. This was not normal behavior. Every species that had conquered had eventually surrendered or fled. Self-preservation was the most basic instinct of all living things. Why were the humans different? On the ground, the battle reached the civilian shelter, and his remaining soldiers formed a line in front of the heavy doors. There were only 8 of them left now, 8 soldiers against an army. Amy was still alive, still fighting. Her armor was damaged and her left arm was bleeding from a wound she did not remember getting. But she kept firing, kept killing, kept standing. A massive warrior broke through their line. It grabbed one of soldiers and threw him through a wall. Another soldier tried to stop it and was cut in half by its claws. The warrior turned toward the shelter doors. Behind those doors were 3,000 helpless civilians. Amy saw what was happening. She saw the warrior reaching for the door. She saw the children inside, crying and holding their parents. She saw everything she had joined the Defense Force to protect. She did not think, she did not hesitate. Amy ran forward and jumped onto the warrior's back. It tried to throw her off, but she locked her arms around its neck. She pulled the grenade from her belt, the last one she had, and pressed it against the warrior's head. "This is for Ohio," she whispered. The explosion killed them both. The other stopped. They stared at the place where Amy and their warrior had died together. They did not understand what they had just seen. What kind of creature would sacrifice itself to kill a single enemy? Felt tears running down his face, but he kept fighting. He owed Amy that much. He owed everyone who had died that much. His radio crackled again. It was Jake, his voice tired but steady. "I just received a message. Reinforcements are coming, 12 ships from Earth. They modified their hyperdrives to get here faster. They will arrive in 18 hours. Looked at his soldiers, 3 left. Just 3 out of the 12 who had started with him. "Can you hold in orbit for 18 hours? Asked. There was a long pause. "I will hold until you tell me to stop." Smiled, though there was no joy in it. "Then we will hold down here too." He raised his rifle and kept fighting. They were going to learn something today. They were going to learn that humans did not know how to give up. The night was long and filled with fire. Sergeant Cole and his 3 remaining soldiers held the civilian shelter for 6 more hours. They fought without rest, without food, without hope. They fought because giving up was not something they knew how to do. By morning, help arrived from an unexpected place. Civilians started joining the fight. Ben Miller was a farmer. He was 45 years old and had never held a weapon in his life. But when he saw the soldiers dying to protect his family, he picked up a rifle from a fallen and started shooting. He was not a good shot. He missed more often than he hit. But he was another body, another gun, another human who refused to surrender. More civilians followed. Teachers, engineers, doctors, farmers. They came out of the shelters with whatever weapons they could find. Some had pulse rifles from fallen soldiers. Some had tools from their workshops. One old woman had a kitchen knife and a look in her eyes that scared even. Lieutenant organized them as best she could. She put them in positions where they could do the most damage with the least risk. She taught them how to use the weapons in minutes when it should have taken weeks. She did everything she could to keep them alive. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to survive. Commander received reports from his ground forces and grew angry for the first time in decades. His warriors should have conquered this colony in hours. Instead, they were fighting for every building, every street, every piece of ground. The humans would not stop. Every time he thought they were beaten, they found new ways to fight. He ordered more troops to the surface. He ordered his ships to bomb the colony from orbit. He wanted to burn the whole planet and be done with it. But something stopped him, something that had never happened to the Dominion before. His long-range sensors detected ships coming out of hyperspace. 12 human warships, moving faster than any ship had a right to move. They were burning out their engines to reach the colony sooner. The ships would never make it home. Their crews had known this when they volunteered. They came anyway. In orbit, Captain Jake saw the reinforcements arrive and felt tears in his eyes. The Resolute was damaged and running low on power. His crew was exhausted. They had been fighting for 16 hours without rest. The lead ship of the reinforcement fleet opened a communication channel. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She was about 50 years old, with gray hair and cold eyes. "This is Commander Grant of the Earth ship Victory. We are here to help." Jake almost laughed. "Commander, I have never been so happy to see anyone in my life." Studied the tactical situation on her screen. The fleet still outnumbered them, but not by as much as before. Jake had destroyed 4 of their smaller ships during the night. The rest were damaged from his constant attacks. Captain said, "You have done an incredible job. Now let us finish this together." The 12 reinforcement ships spread out, surrounding the fleet. They were not bigger or stronger than the enemy, but they had something they did not expect. They were not afraid to die. On the ground, the humans were learning the same lesson. They were weak individually, but together they were dangerous. They could not match in strength or speed, but they could think. They could plan. They could adapt. Led a small team through the underground tunnels beneath the colony. These tunnels were built for emergencies, a way to move supplies and people without being seen. They did not know they existed. And his team emerged behind the enemy command post. Commander had set up his base in the ruins of the colony's town hall. 50 elite warriors guarded him. Had 8 soldiers. 3 of them were farmers who had only been fighting for a few hours. The odds were impossible. They attacked anyway. The fight was brutal and fast. Killed 2 warriors in the first 10 seconds, shooting them in the face before they could react. Ben Miller, the farmer, tackled another warrior to the ground and held it down while another soldier shot it repeatedly. They lost people. Watched a young woman named Lisa fall to claws. He watched Ben take a wound that should have killed him but kept fighting anyway. He watched humans die, one after another, but they kept pushing forward. Had given a special device before the mission. It was a jammer, something she had built from parts she had taken from captured equipment. If he could get close enough to the command post, he could shut down all communications. Reached the center of the building. Warriors were everywhere, but they were confused. They had never faced an attack like this before. Their commanders were screaming orders, but no one was listening. He activated the jammer. Suddenly, everyone on the planet lost contact with their leaders. Their communication network went silent. Warriors who had been working together for centuries were now alone, cut off from the hive mind that guided them. Commander felt the silence like a physical blow. He tried to contact his troops, but there was nothing. He tried to contact his ships in orbit, but they could not hear him either. He turned and saw standing in front of him. The human was covered in blood, most of it not his own. He had a rifle in one hand and a knife in the other. "You think you have won," growled. "I am commander of the 3rd Fleet. I have conquered 47 worlds. You are nothing but insects." Smiled, it was not a happy smile. "Insects we may be, but we are insects that bite." They fought was faster and stronger. His claws could kill with a single blow, but had something that did not understand. He had been fighting all night. He had watched his friends die. He had nothing left to lose. Dodged the first attack and slashed with his knife. Blood, dark and thick, splattered the ground. Roared and swung again. Took the blow on his armored shoulder. The armor cracked, but he stayed on his feet. He raised his rifle and fired directly into his face. The commander staggered back. His regeneration began to work, but did not give it time. He fired again and again, emptying his entire magazine into his head. Vel stood over him, breathing hard. He hurt everywhere. He was pretty sure some of his ribs were broken, but he was alive and the enemy commander was dead. In orbit, the battle was turning too. Commander Grant had outmaneuvered the fleet, trapping them between the reinforcement ships and the planet's gravity well. They fought hard, but without their commander's orders, they were disorganized. One by one, the ships fell. The sun rose over New Virginia. The colony was in ruins. Hundreds of people were dead, but the survivors were still standing. And they were running. The surviving warriors tried to retreat to their remaining ships. They had lost their commander. They had lost their communications. They had lost something else too, something they could not name because they had never felt it before. Commander Grant watched the enemy fleet from the bridge of the Victory. She had studied alien species for 20 years. She knew how they thought, how they fought, how they could be beaten, but she had never expected to actually fight them. No one had. The Dominion had seemed so far away, a nightmare that happened to other species. Now that nightmare was running from humans. "Do not let them escape," ordered, "not a single ship." The human fleet moved to block the retreat. The enemy still had 6 warships, all damaged but still dangerous. They could destroy themselves and take half the human fleet with them. Any other species would have done exactly that. But they were confused. Their commanders were dead. Their warriors on the ground were dying. And somewhere deep in their ancient minds, a new emotion was forming, an emotion they had no word for. Private Hayes was working in the communications center on the Victory. He was a linguistics specialist, trained to decode alien languages. During the battle, he had managed to tap into the communication frequencies that the jammer had not affected. He had been listening to the enemy talk for hours. At first, it was normal military communication. Orders, reports, tactical information. But as the battle turned against them, something changed. They started using new words. Called Commander Grant to the communications center. He played her a recording of two warriors talking to each other. Their deep, growling voices filled the room. "What are they saying?" asked. His face was pale. "They do not have a word for fear in their language. They never needed one, but listen to this part." He played a section of the recording. One was describing the humans, how they kept fighting even when wounded, how they sacrificed themselves to kill single warriors, how they refused to run away. "That word there," said, pointing at his translation screen. "It is new. They made it up during the battle. The closest translation I can give you is the feeling of being hunted." Stared at him. "They are afraid of us." "I think so. They do not understand what they are feeling because they have never felt it before. For 12,000 years they have been the hunters. Now, for the first time, they are the prey." Smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Then let us teach them what that feeling really means." She ordered the human ships to begin broadcasting. Across every frequency, they played recordings of human war songs from throughout history. They played the sound of soldiers marching, drums beating, voices raised in fury and defiance. They had never heard anything like it. On the ground, and his surviving soldiers continued the attack. They were not trying to kill every on the planet. They did not have the numbers for that. They were doing something more important. They were hunting. They found warriors hiding in buildings and drove them out. They chased them through the streets, always staying just close enough to keep them running. They left the bodies of dead in visible places, arranged in patterns that meant nothing but looked terrifying. They began to fall apart. Without their commanders, without their unity, they were just individual warriors facing an enemy that would not stop. They tried to fight, but the humans kept coming. They tried to hide, but the humans found them. They tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Lieutenant set up loudspeakers around the colony. She played the screams of warriors she had recorded during the battle. She played them on repeat, all day and all night. The sound echoed through the ruins, a constant reminder that the hunters had become the hunted. In orbit, Captain Jake led the final attack on the fleet. His ship, the Resolute, was barely holding together. Half his crew was wounded, but they kept fighting, kept pushing, kept refusing to give up. The flagship, the Crushing Tide, was the last enemy ship still operational. Its commander was dead, its crew was panicking, and its weapons were failing one by one. Jake opened a communication channel. He wanted them to hear him. "You came to our world to kill us. You thought we were weak because we are small. You thought we were prey because we have soft skin and no claws, but you were wrong." He paused, watching the massive warship on his screen. "We are humans. We have fought our way across our own planet for 10,000 years. We have killed every predator that tried to hunt us. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions of our own kind. We are still here." The Crushing Tide tried to turn away, tried to run. "You do not get to run. You do not get to escape. You killed our people, our friends, our families, and now you are going to pay for it." The human fleet opened fire. Every ship, every weapon, everything they had left. The Crushing Tide shuddered under the assault. Its shields failed. Its hull cracked. Fire erupted across its surface. The mighty warship that had conquered dozens of worlds broke apart in the cold darkness of space. On the ground, the remaining warriors surrendered. It was the first time in 12,000 years that warriors had surrendered to anyone. They knelt in the ruins of New Virginia, their massive forms bent low, their claws pressed against the ground. Stood in front of them, his rifle still in his hands. He was exhausted. He had been fighting for almost 2 days without rest. He had lost count of how many friends he had buried. But they had won. News of the Battle of New Virginia spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Every species in the Orion Arm received the recordings. They saw the massive warriors kneeling before small, soft, fragile humans. They saw the wreckage of the fleet floating in orbit. They saw the impossible become real. The Dominion received the news in their capital, 10,000 light-years away. The High Council, the oldest and most powerful in existence, watched the recordings in silence. They saw their warriors die. They saw their ships burn. They saw something they had never imagined. They saw themselves losing. For the first time in 12,000 years, the most feared species in the galaxy knew what it felt like to be afraid. 1 year had passed since the Battle of New Virginia. The colony was being rebuilt, slowly but steadily. New buildings rose from the ashes. New families moved in to join the survivors. Life continued as it always did. Captain Jake retired from the Defense Force. He had been offered promotions, medals, command of the entire fleet. He turned them all down. He just wanted to help rebuild the place he had almost died protecting. He lived in a small house on the edge of the colony. From his window, he could see the central square, where a statue now stood. It was a statue of Private Amy, the young woman who had sacrificed herself to save the civilians in the shelter. She stood with her arms raised, holding a grenade, forever frozen in the moment of her greatest courage. Jake visited the statue every morning. He talked to it sometimes, telling Amy about the colony, about the people she had saved. He knew she could not hear him, but it made him feel better anyway. Sergeant Cole was promoted to commander and given his own ship. He named it the in honor of Amy. The ship was bigger and stronger than the Resolute, equipped with the weapons and the best crew in the fleet. Did not want revenge. He had seen enough death to last a lifetime, but he knew that they would come back someday, and when they did, he would be ready. Lieutenant continued her research. She studied the technology they had captured during the battle. She learned how their armor worked, how their communications functioned, how their ships flew. She used that knowledge to build better weapons, better defenses, better ways to fight back. She never forgot the fear she had felt during the battle. She used it. She let it drive her to work harder, to think smarter, to prepare for the next fight. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's victory spread. Species that had lived in terror of for thousands of years heard about the small, soft creatures who had beaten them. They could not believe it at first, but the recordings were real. The evidence was clear. They could be defeated. Ambassadors from a dozen civilizations came to Earth. They wanted to see these humans for themselves. They wanted to understand how such weak creatures had done the impossible. Met them at the reception. She was the human ambassador to the galactic community, a position that had not existed before New Virginia. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and a calm smile that hid a sharp mind. The alien ambassadors were a strange collection. Some were tall and thin, with skin that changed colors. Some were short and round, covered in thick fur. Some floated in the air, with no visible bodies at all. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy, worlds that had all lived under the shadow of the Dominion. A representative from the Confederation spoke first. He was a large creature covered in blue scales, with 3 eyes that blinked independently. "Ambassador," he said, his voice translated by a small device on his chest. "We have watched the recordings of your battle many times. We have studied your soldiers, your tactics, your weapons, but we still do not understand. How did you win? What is your secret?" Smiled, "We have no secret. We are exactly what we appear to be. Small, weak, fragile. We die easily. A single blow from a claw would kill any of us." The alien ambassadors looked confused. If this was true, how had the humans won? Let me tell you about my species, continued. Millions of years ago, we lived on a planet filled with predators. Lions that could crush our bones with one bite, bears that could tear us apart with their claws, wolves that hunted in packs and never gave up once they had our scent. She walked slowly across the room, looking at each alien in turn. We should have died. Every rule of nature said we would. We were too small, too slow, too weak, but we did not die. We survived, and do you know how? She stopped and faced them directly. We learned to fight together. We learned to make tools that extended our reach. We learned to plan ahead, to set traps, to attack from ambush. We learned to keep going even when we were hurt, even when we were tired, even when everything seemed hopeless. The alien ambassadors were silent, listening. They evolved to be predators. They are perfect killing machines designed by nature to hunt and destroy. But we evolved to make predators extinct. Every dangerous creature on our world, we hunted them down. We killed them. We ate them. And then we took their place at the top of the food chain. She leaned forward slightly. They came to New Virginia expecting prey. They found something else. They found a species that has been fighting for survival since before we had language. A species that does not know how to give up. A species that will sacrifice everything to protect the ones it loves. The representative nodded slowly. You are not prey at all. You are predators who look like prey. Smiled. Some of my people would say that is exactly right. The meeting continued for hours. The aliens had many questions and answered them all. When it was over, they returned to their ships with a new understanding of humanity. And a new hope for the galaxy. Back on New Virginia, Jake stood in front of Amy's statue as the sun set. The sky turned orange and red, beautiful colors that reminded him of the fires he had seen during the battle. Cole joined him, his commander's uniform still stiff and new. I heard they sent a message today, said. They are requesting a peace treaty. Jake raised an eyebrow. Really? The mighty Dominion wants peace with the soft little humans. Apparently, the High Council is worried. They have never lost a battle before. Now they do not know what to do. Jake looked at the statue for a long moment. Amy would have laughed at that. The idea of those monsters being afraid of us. They should be afraid, said quietly. We are the most dangerous thing they have ever encountered, not because we are strong, but because we do not stop, ever. Jake nodded. He thought about all the people who had died during the battle. Amy, Lisa, Ben, who had died from his wounds 3 days after the fighting ended, dozens of soldiers and civilians who had given everything to protect their home. Their sacrifice had changed the galaxy. They were no longer invincible. Other species were standing up against them, inspired by humanity's example. The balance of power was shifting. Do you think there will be more wars? Jake asked. Was quiet for a moment. Probably. They will not give up their empire without a fight. And there are other dangers out there, species we have not met yet. The galaxy is a dangerous place. He put his hand on Jake's shoulder. But we will be ready. We are humans. Fighting is what we do, and we are very, very good at it. Jake smiled sadly. He did not want more wars. He wanted peace for himself and for everyone, but he knew was right. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. They had shown what they were capable of, and nothing would ever be the same. The stars came out one by one, scattered across the dark sky like diamonds. Somewhere out there, other species were looking at those same stars and thinking about the future, some with hope, some with fear. But all of them were thinking about humanity. The most feared species in the galaxy had met its match, and that match was a small, soft, fragile creature called a human being. The legend had begun.